Yeah, thanks so much. So what I love about Coca-Cola United and the work their team is doing around Power Platform is that it brilliantly showcases how once you overcome operational challenges, you're able to leverage all of that innovation to ultimately enhance how you're approaching customer engagement. And so through Abigail Perkins and Bob Means' story, they'll get into how they automated a lot of repetitive processes and integrated with their existing systems. But what I love is that they were able to streamline their operations, reduce labor costs, and minimize errors. So, by hearing customers share their journey, from inception to actually as they got started with the platform, it really empowers them to tackle, these high value strategic projects that were really previously constrained by legacy apps. So, with that being said, if you guys have questions, happy to facilitate, but I want to hand it over to Abigail and Bob to start their journey and share how they got started with the platform. So over to you guys.
Great, thanks. I've just thought I would start. The real master here is Abigail, but I thought I would start um, by kind of introducing Coca-Cola United in general. For those that are not familiar with the bottling community, we are different from the Coca-Cola company. The company concentrates on the products that you're all familiar with, Coca-Cola, of course, but then a wide variety of things like smart water, et cetera. We're a bottler, and we were actually, our history goes back to the original bottler in Chattanooga, that is in that late 1800s. And we're family owned, and we have territory between the coast of Georgia to the coast of Texas, including some of Florida, some of Tennessee. But in general, that's our primary territory. We are the execution arm of the Coca-Cola company, or the beverage company. We actually produce and distribute products that are not even the Coca-Cola company. We do carry a competitor, Dr. Pepper, and we produce it, and so that's part of our role as well. In terms of what our evolution was that kind of got us on board with the really the alignment with Microsoft, et cetera, takes us back to we were about 1/3 the size that we are now about 15 years ago. And we started discussions with the Coca-Cola company where they were refranchising and allowing us to purchase territory that basically tripled our size and tripled our footprint in terms of sales, et cetera. So not just production and distribution and selling for our territory that we had, but virtually triple the size of it. When that refranchising took place, there were a number of bottlers that were acquiring territory as well. And we joined together with them and came up with an idea of shared services, which is called Kona, Coke One North America, which is a shared services for our IT. So we really moved from really owning the ERP and in particular SAP, and an application that was a legacy green screen application called Basis, to a new world that was really fundamentally SAP and Salesforce, and eliminated that legacy green screen application. At the same time that we were acquiring territory, so we were moving really our responsibilities that were, in my group, responsibilities for supporting the SAP systems, et cetera, to a model that we had a shared service that was really kind of managing that core infrastructure that supported our ERP systems. When we did that, it really changed our world in terms of my organization, because we were looking at really transforming our world into a traditional IT organization to more of a business transformation organization, and therefore our organization is called Business Solutions. It's not called. It's part of the. It currently reports up under the CIO, but it is really about process and optimization, automation, et cetera, to transform our business. So these the analysts that were originally, they transitioned and we expanded them to really transition to supporting those ERP systems, Salesforce and SAP. But we wanted to use them to really do something more innovation, more new ideas, and also to wire these ERP systems so that we could have a better digital world. The digital world was taking place in terms of transforming, and so we knew this is the direction we wanted to do. Use the core ERP systems for our fundamental stuff, but then on peripheral systems, use it for innovation and tying the systems together for more complex cross ERP systems and opportunities that we had to help the business move towards a digital world. So we originally started, because we were a traditional SAP shop, we originally started with SAP as kind of we kicked the tires. We were using some of their tools for doing ETL work, but quickly we found limitations to what we could use in that SAP framework. And so when the Kona system made the decision to land on Salesforce, we actually kicked the tires on Salesforce solutions to kind of be that low code. They were advertising that kind of capability, but then the Kona system also made a decision to move to Azure. So we were playing around with both ideas, both Salesforce and the Power Platform that was just being developed and being released by the Microsoft system. And it was a clear decision of what we landed on, which was the Microsoft solution. And it's really been, we never looked back past that point. This transition into Microsoft has really paid the dividends that we had hoped for, in that when things like RPAs became hot topics and so forth, Microsoft jumped in there and really provided us a good solution with RPAs. When we wanted to move towards DevOps, we elected to go to Azure DevOps, CI/CD, all the capabilities that allow you to be a world-class kind of development, or be able to do enterprise type of development work. And then now, just recently, the work and the relationship with AI and the whole Copilot environment, and how they're embedding that into all these environments, with Copilot Studio and so forth. They've continued to bring the right ingredients to us and allow us to be in one platform that allows us to snap stuff together. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to turn it over now to the master that can really talk to all that stuff in detail and can answer any questions. Thanks.
Yeah, any questions on that context? I know this is early on, but on sort of how we got here. That's a good thing.
Not yet, but there will be. So keep going.
Okay. Deal. Yeah, absolutely. So to Bob's point, we have a shared SAP instance through Kona with the other major North American bottlers. And while that comes with some huge benefits, it also can be limiting in the speed we can move, right? We need to coordinate a lot of pieces to get the things done we want to do, and it's not at the pace of innovation that we're looking for at United. So Power Platform has been such an opportunity for us to move at the rate that we can generate ideas. If we can come up with a potentially automatable process, we can have it built in the Power Platform using Power Automate Cloud Flows, Power Automate Desktop Flows, Power Apps, whatever it may be, to automate and improve our processes without the overhead of coordinating all of those parties. And due to how many standard and custom connectors across the Power Platform, we're able to integrate with all of our varying systems, from, SAP, Salesforce, FedEx, you name it. We're getting into everything we need to in one place, and enabling our analysts to act on those ideas. We don't need to wait on pro developers. We don't need a traditional, huge requirements gathering. You can hear about a problem and fix it that week, which has just really changed how we tackle inefficiency. And even if we're not ending up with a Power Platform solution as the final state on all things, because I won't say we necessarily leave everything there. So some things do end up in another tool set. The speed at which we can prove out the efficacy of a solution is unmatched on Power Platform. We can have a functional front end in Power Apps. We can have a running RPA and Power Automate showing exactly what we need and functional, and then the game is beating us, right? We can, we're in a position to challenge those we work with and those that support us to move at the pace we do and to beat us in functionality because we deliver quickly and know what we need because we've built out solutions in Power Platform before we ever go to someone else. So it really is such an enabling force for our analysts and has allowed us to keep our group of more pro developers very small. They are that's my team directly and acts really as a point of escalation when something is beyond our typical Power Platform capabilities. But even then, we're proving it out in Power Platform before we get to that point of more full code development.
So maybe I can just quickly go through these two questions, Abigail, and if you touch on it, like as you tell your story, would be fantastic. Dan had asked if you're using Power Apps with SAP for RW operations, just understanding how you navigated security, SOD issues, licensing, brokering connections.
So we don't have the SAP connector on Power Platform. That has been a limitation of ours due to that Kona ownership. Any connection we have to SAP is controlled by Kona and not through Power Platform. So we have limited APIs into SAP. None of our Power Apps, Cloud Flows, none of that hits SAP directly, not through the SAP connector. So
right.
Security on all that's managed on the Kona side.
And then any challenges you faced with adopting the platform and just overcoming them?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you're taking analysts and introducing a brand new technology and expecting them to pick up a new tool set, I think there's bound to be challenges. There's early adopters naturally and those that they're slower to come around and see the value, but it doesn't take that many proven solutions to show how capable a group can be with these tool sets. So we are quick to share internally on our wins and to check back with everyone and show the continued success and how we're improving in the Power Platform and keep showing people those capabilities. And it's almost inevitable they start to see how those same technologies, those same capabilities can benefit them in their area, and it becomes hard to resist. And then I think a key part where we identify those champions, those more technically minded analysts that are eager to get into a new tool set and chomping at the bit to figure it out themselves. So identifying those people and getting them the tools they need and the training they need, and it disseminates from there has been a key part. Bob, do you have thoughts on that one? I think this is one you and I have talked about a good bit.
Yeah, it is, it is not, even though it is low code and friendly, it is not, at least for us, something that we have turned loose to the business just because the real purpose of the ERP analysts, these are the business analysts that report up into my organization. they're very siloed in subject matter experts, and their expertise is really to pull out and to come up with ideas that are innovative or really time consuming based on um, really heavy understanding of the business parts. And so they were just the natural target to go after rather than everybody trying to, just have it wide open where we're trying to, where we're building the same thing multiple times and so forth and so on. And actually, I think that's been somewhat of our strategy, even in AI space, to focus on because there's a lot of possible value in AI, but there's I think what we've been able to distill it down to is very functional and very quality oriented versus kind of being fuzzy, soft. It sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, sometimes gives you a good answer, sometimes it doesn't, type of thing. I think our approach on AI has been, again, kind of a little bit constraining, not wide open, but I think it's more of our philosophy in terms of keeping the business focused on business and not trying to necessarily build. Now we feel as though we have the partnerships of the business and the thought leaders in the business side to be able to glean those ideas and get their feedback without having them being distracted with actually trying to do low code development and so forth. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is that going back to the question on the SAP interface, you mentioned it, Abigail, that we're a single instance, so we're multi-tenant. All the bottlers are going into the same instance, and it's really through security that they're able to enable that multi-tenancy. And SAP is not really built for multi-tenancy, so their APIs and the custom connectors are not really tuned in to that situation. And it's Kona's responsibility to ensure that we silo each of the bottlers and we cannot step on each other or see each other's information. So they are very, cautious, I would say, to ensure that is maintained, that credibility is maintained. I think but it is extremely important that in terms of the way we approach integration into SAP and Salesforce is through APIs. It's just that Kona develops a middle piece that allows us a very isolated view of just our information and our capability of doing updates into the Kona system. We are still pursuing the opportunities of using the custom connector, and we think there's opportunity to keep pushing that, and we look forward to working with the other bottlers to get confirmation, because that would really open up, rather than building middleware APIs that are secured, it would really allow us to move faster with our integration into SAP. That is a big point. When I mentioned RPAs, I mentioned earlier, we are really not a fan of RPAs. The way we connect into these other applications, these ERP applications, is via APIs, even though they may be limited, even though they may be a little bit slow us down. Once we get one enabled, we find that we can use them for many use cases. So the investment is worth it. And we've seen that synergy with other bottlers where we develop the API and we share the cost, and we're leveraging it together in a collaborative fashion. And a lot of times it's one of the beauties of Kona and the collaboration of Kona is that we are able to collaborate. It gives us an avenue to collaborate with other bottlers rather than reinvent the wheel for everything that we do.
And then on that note, just so the audience is familiar with the story of how you guys have transformed how you're approaching order fulfillment and for shipments. I know we've done case studies on your freestyle vending machine, and then some challenges and inefficiencies you had in the warehouse. Would love to, before we drill into some of the technical questions in the chat, just from a business perspective, you guys obviously had some big challenges to solve around how you were approaching things, whether it was like customer engagement, how you were fulfilling orders. Would you guys just be able to share a couple snippets on I guess what forced you to evaluate other options to solve some of the challenges you had with SAP with Power?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. Where we don't want to develop applications. We want innovation to come to the business as quickly as possible, that period. And we don't want to build maintenance applications. So our first approach is always to try to work through Kona for a solution. This freestyle solution was a great example of where it involved not just Kona, but it involved the Coca-Cola Company, where they were doing the fulfillment of the freestyle cartridges. And because we were integrating with them, they were in the midst of a big SAP S4 implementation for years, and they were not willing to do any enablement for us to connect into them. So in that particular case, it was an example where we had to use an RPA approach to actually building a component of that to where we're connecting in and actually placing orders through their user interface using an RPA capability because the APIs were not available. Abigail, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on. We consistently are going to prefer an API and orchestrating something more like a Power Automate Cloud Flow over a desktop flow and RPA. And we have several times been in the situation of having to build an RPA into SAP due to other constraints, not having the APIs that we want or need to accomplish something. But I think despite our preference to not use an RPA, if we don't have to, it does give us the promise we can do it. If you can show us how to do something, we can build an RPA to do it. And regardless of the timeline of an API or when it's coming, we're going to get done that order fulfillment. We're going to automate these processes. It's just not the perfect answer when we get to pick.
Yeah, and just in that same time frame, that order capability, that APIs that we did into the Kona one for orders, turned out to be, as I was mentioning earlier, that API is reusable, and we've used that to another use case where we, during the pandemic, we wanted to enable what we call truckload fundraisers to where it's kind of like selling Girl Scout cookies in the old way. But during the pandemic, none of the parents or the consumers wanted to, have kids come over signing checks and collecting the checks, just like in kind of the Girl Scout cookie sales kind of scenario. So we were forced to rapidly build a solution that was, an e-commerce site, and that allowed basically a campaign like Girl Scout cookies to be run via e-commerce. And we needed the ability for the sales rep to actually spin up those sites and with very little training and rapidly and simply to be able to spin up a site for a school to create a fundraiser, a custom fundraiser. We partnered again with Microsoft on D365 they allowed us capabilities with APIs to be able to spin all those up with using a Power Platform to basically give the user interface for the sales rep. And then so they were able to easily spin a storefront e-commerce site up for a particular fundraiser. And then we use the order entry capability APIs in the background to communicate to our SAP, our Kona SAP, for what the total order was for the truckload that was going to go deliver all the products at the end of the fundraiser. So that's kind of an example of where we're able to build a component, and the architecture. I think, Abigail, if you want to talk to the architecture, how we've architected some of these things in combination with just the Power Platform, but maybe the Logic apps and how you've kind of architected that. I think it may be of interest to, so they're reusable components.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great point. As much as we do build in the Power Platform, there are times that we take the ideas fleshed out there and carry them over into Azure. And Power Automate Cloud Flows and Logic Apps being so similar makes it a smooth transition and easy to carry that through. And so when something is particularly reusable, we build it in Azure and a Logic app and give it connectors into the Power Platform so that analysts can use it across different projects as needed without starting over on a repeated task. So searching for customers, things like that happen in all different processes, we can build a totally reusable component that then a technical analyst, but not a pro developer, can just hook into that connector and get this repeated functionality, not starting from scratch. So it really expedites the startup of a project and the proving out of our automation capabilities. And then we just pull stuff into more of a pro dev space in Azure as needed. And when when it gets too repetitive, when the reusability starts to outweigh the ease of Power Platform, we switch over into an Azure space.
We have lots of questions around RPA, and I think some of them are around like comments you potentially made around, favorability and why and when to use, but particularly interested in the scalability element of it. From what I understand, you guys are in the process of shifting to hosted RPA for the scaling. So if you can chat about that, that would be helpful. And then just some broader comments in the chat about RPA and how you're using it and how you think about licensing both on the SAP side as well as on the Power Platform side.
Yes, great questions. Yeah, we are trying to switch to the hosted RPAs to ease some of the scaling situations. So we absolutely use these RPAs and use them to get into SAP, and the management of the virtual machines for that and the timing and scheduling and making sure they're not tripping over each other is the worst part. So going towards hosted RPAs seems like it's the move, and Lori's been huge in helping us get what we need to stand that up. We're working closely with our security and infrastructure teams to execute that transition, and hoping that will ease some of our pain points there, because that has been a major component. And from an SAP side, we have devoted bot users that are department specific and only have the permissions they need to execute the automated tasks that they're required to for any given RPA. And those are then used at runtime. That's another whole component, is managing the passwords on those and all those kinds of things. So there's a huge security component in making sure we're handling this SAP layer with the RPAs and that the RPAs aren't able to access or do more than they need to. But we've had good luck with it thus far, and continue to work very closely with, like I said, security to make sure we're keeping everything in check on that. What else? I'm also overwhelmed by the questions. Tell me what to do next, Raina.
So Abigail, I kind of been consolidating and getting a few of these together. Can you talk about your ALM process and whether or not you've built some sort of COE to kind of help manage the Power Platform and its growth?
Yeah. Okay. We're all over the place. We are trying every variation because we are super into a one-touch deployment heavy CI/CD in the Azure space. Nobody gets into prod. We are ARM templates fully deployed with gates and approvals from Azure DevOps. That versus Power Platform CI/CD has been our challenge in figuring out how to snap all this together with the rest of our architecture. So we have a few different pieces running right now, trying to decide our best route, because with the DevOps plugins, we've looked at those and the pipelines and Power Platform, and we do run a COE environment and help with maintenance and monitoring that way. But it is a huge undertaking, and it doesn't, at least from where I'm sitting, isn't always as smooth as an Azure deployment. When you're doing Power Platform, we've got such a mix of tools, and Power Platform wants you to be a user that's deploying, whereas Azure's totally good with the service principal, call it a day. So that has been hard. We're still working through it. Working closely with Lori again to make sure we're staying on the right path there, and with our other partners to make sure it's something that they can help us with, and that when they work with us on Power Platform, it's sustainable and we can execute at the level we want. We do store copies of all of our Power Platform resources in DevOps, so we always have backups and keep it there. But as far as fully automated CI/CD, we're evolving. We're a little all over the place with some legacy projects and different attempts on how to best handle deployments. So good question. Wish I had the perfect answer for you. When I know, I'll tell you.
Well, here's another layer to that question. How are you guys managing licensing requests and consumption?
Great one. Carefully. We'll real carefully build some apps to not need the premium license. So we have definitely built some stuff to avoid certain licensing costs, so that if you stay below the premium connectors, we can play some games and get things that are deployable to the whole company. So we have several Power Apps that are in the hands of every user at United. Our employee communications app is a native app, but is a wrapped Power App that uses no premium connectors, so no additional licensing costs on that. So that's one of the games we play, and then it is always a challenge. This group knows when it's renewal time for me that I'm going to start asking some hard questions on the Power App licenses, because it's challenging to work through, for sure. Like Microsoft help, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. Absolutely not. We have seen enough value that I think it's not really a question. When we're saving enormous amounts of time in Power Apps, we have several apps that are in thousands of users' hands, active every day, and it's such an improvement on the process that we don't think too hard on the per app licensing costs at that point. But when going full scale in the hands of the whole company, it's for sure something we keep in mind and play some games with.
Nice.
Alicia, I want to go over to you. Did you have a question? I hope I said your name correctly. And you're on mute.
Hi, me? You're
Yes.
talking about me? Okay,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you. I wanted to ask specifically two questions. One is, how did Coca-Cola United plan the training of the employees to create their own apps? Or it was a training, or you let them to recover the information by themselves?
We push people to Microsoft Learn anytime we can. And we have a few saved collections internally that we share that are sort of specific to different groups. Oh, you're looking to get started with Power Automate, you're looking to get started with Power Apps. And we take a selection of Microsoft Learn trainings that we love as a team and have vetted, and share that collection internally. So a lot of self-teaching. And then Business Solutions as a department has done some more hands-on trainings, just training each other, really showing, hey, this is how I've solved this problem, and going from there. But I think that's where we come back to identifying those eager adopters, right? there are always those users that if you give them something low code, something they can Google their way out of, they're going to do a good job with it. And that's, I think, a lot of our biggest wins, less of a super structured training undertaking. Like Bob said, we're not really trying to get this in the hands of every business user. Just from a governance standpoint, we'll lose our minds. But
Okay. Okay. And how many users do you start with? How many citizen developers? Do you remember?
ooh, a handful to start with.
Yes.
Not many. 2 or 3. 2 maybe.
Okay.
I think it was me and another guy. To get us started and prove it out. When we started in Power Platform, we didn't know if this was going to be anything. We were looking at several low code options and trying to figure out what was a good fit, and got into several of them, ran with Power Platform. And once you prove out with 2 people how much value is in this, just snowballs from there.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
we
consider a
look.
Power Up?
Go ahead.
What's that, Bob?
I was just going to say, we looked at Lightning, Salesforce Lightning pretty deeply, because we had landed on, Kona had landed on Salesforce, and they were marketing as this, but it was not much of a competition, to be honest with you.
Okay, perfect. So you consider Power Apps to be a core system in the company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's everything is why not, and how do we do it? And then we sometimes have to pick up the phone and call up, our great partner, Microsoft.
I was going to say, if Power Apps goes down, I'm getting woken up, and then I'm going to call Microsoft and wake them up, because we have enough vital Power Apps. We'll still deliver Coke if it goes down, but a lot of people are going to complain to me if we lose a lot of this functionality.
Okay.
And then
Perfect.
Sunita, it looks like you had a question.
Yeah, I have a quick question, and I don't know if this was already answered, but just I want to go back to SAP, connecting to SAP. I heard you say that you use the APIs when possible, and if that doesn't work, maybe you go back to RPA. But I was wondering if you use out-of-the-box SAP connectors, specifically the Intra-ID, using Intra-ID.
I wish we could. This is something we would like to do. The out-of-the-box SAP connectors seem like they'd be a huge win. We love a lot of the out-of-the-box connectors within Azure and the Power Platform. Due to how our SAP arrangement is with Kona, we don't have permission to use those right now and cannot get into them. So when we're integrating with SAP, it's through APIs that Kona has opened up. So an SAP BOPI that they've added a security layer to give us that multi-tenancy that then we're hooking into as an HTTP endpoint, or through RPA, directly signing in as a bot user.
Got it. Thanks.
What else y'all got? Give me a hard one.
I think there was a question around, when we think across the evolution of Copilot and AI, what has the adoption been like at Coca-Cola United? And I guess, what do you guys have planned in the future? Like what's top of mind from whether it's a use case or a platform perspective that you guys are envisioning tackling in the coming months?
Bob, you got thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I guess the AI part, they may be interested in kind of how we approach that. The couple of use cases, Mr. Clean and
Yeah. I was going to say, I think
rundown.
Several of our we've had as Business Solutions as a department, we've done some trainings and deep dives into Copilot and Copilot Studio and getting our analysts familiar with its capabilities. We have several POCs and pilots ongoing with Copilot Studio to see what we can get out of that. None have hit production thus far. We do have several AI-enabled solutions that are Power Platform, but not using Copilot. So we're using our Azure OpenAI instance, hooking into that from Power Platform. So Mr. Clean is the name of our master data cleanup tool we have that is using our Azure OpenAI instance to gather basically data off the internet about our customers, Googling them, seeing what kind of customer that, like, what kind of business this is, giving us additional context to supplement our customer master data and help correct that. So one example, we have a few AI projects we've rolled out this year, but none using Copilot or Copilot Studio so far.
It looks like Kathy has a question.
I have so many questions, but so many questions. But some of my big questions are wrapped around right now. The business, how are you showing the value of the Power Platform to your leadership? How, ROIs and just the business value to where you're proving that, hey, going forward, we may need additional premium licensing, or this is how we want to have our stuff set up, or we need additional developers, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to ask a second one that's sort of kind of related in that, well, actually, I'll just leave it there for the moment, and then I can go on to the other ones at some other point in time.
That's a great question, and we have debated how to exactly show that usage over time. What we're doing now is have some reporting set up that basically takes data we're getting from various solutions and logging that we have and combining it into something a little more human readable to give good stats on that. So a recent pull from that, for example, we have an app called Print Shop that lets you request printed materials to be outside of customers. So Coca-Cola banner, a sticker on a cooler, whatever it is. And it's how field users can request printed material. So at last count, we are well over 6 million printed items ordered through the Power app. So we are able to pull stats out of our apps and combine it into something that's meaningful from that standpoint, and pull metrics on our API usage from Kona to understand, how many order creates were done via API, and we know that those were done through these tools. So pulling that together, that's a great point. Isn't always the easiest. You have to map what's happening from a technological standpoint to something real world to have that impact with leadership. But it's a reporting point we keep an eye on and continue to develop to make sure we can explain the value that's being created through all this.
Yeah, and all these projects start with an ideation template, which has a place for return on investment, that at least we get the people thinking the business side. They're generally, either the ERP analyst takes it to the business and points out an opportunity, and then the business signs up for it and says, wow, what a great idea. Or the business actually comes to us with the idea, or a pain point that they're saying. So all these projects have sponsors. We're not building it and hope they come. There's once we build it and people see what we can do, we've had, it's more of a really an opportunity on prioritization of our resources to what we can actually, focus on. So a lot of that comes down to either it's strategic, a new way to get into a new part of the market, like micromarts, which are like unattended retail. We think of it as like a full service vending machine, but it's like a big one that people can walk into and virtually check out with their products with a kiosk type of situation. This has a huge impact on our full service vending market. We do not just delivery to Walmarts, big truck deliveries, but we also we have tens of thousands of vending machines that we support. So this is kind of a big opportunity to replace what are traditional banks of vendors, and it becomes a little grocery store, convenience retail, and then technologies that we're able to do. So some of this stuff is highly visible. And another example would be how we took, remember I mentioned the truckload fundraiser. We took that same use case and we said, our employees are buying product from us at a very discounted rate. And they're doing it every day, but they're doing it in a very manual fashion to communicate on the phone to an administrator, and then the administrators having to manually pick this. Let's use what we built already to go after it. So some of these applications have footprints that are across the entire organization that make their life easier. And those wins are, at least allowing us some visibility to what we can do, and making life easier for all of our associates.
And once they see those things, to Bob's point, it's much less of a game of convincing people this is valuable and more pacing the amount of work we have and deciding what to tackle next, because the list is getting long.
Let's go to two. It looks like we've got two folks raising their hand. Herrera, let's start with you. You want to come off mute? Okay. That may have not been a question. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have one question. Sorry for interrupt. How do you attract or recruit people to be citizen developers or business technologists, or not with the techie profile, to be in a democratization environment? How do you attract or recruit them, and how do you ensure the interest in using the platform in Coca-Cola?
I won't say that we're deep in the game of hunting for citizen developers. So we have a team of analysts that is our sort of point. There's analysts for each functional business area, and they are often acting as that citizen developer. And then citizen developers outside that, within our Power Platform space, it's less that we're finding them and more that they're finding us, that they saw something cool, they had a question about how we pulled something off, they saw something from Microsoft, they joined this something, and from there, we'll get them the resources they need, or guide them on how to build something that we can help support and meets our standards and governance. Or the other angle is also, we'll just see people in the power platform, right? We're looking for who's interested on their own, because we have enough people trying to solve these problems and excited about it and interested, that it's less that we're trying to sell it and convince more and more users to get in there, and more governing the ones we've got, and keeping an eye out for who's out there building a power app that we don't know anything about. So that's another angle. If we don't keep a close eye on, COE and what's going on in Admin Center, we will find out about something on the Power Platform once they're done with it. And they're like, all right, I want the dev team to take this over now. I'm totally done. And we've got to take a totally citizen developer through code review and understand what they did. Less looking for more trouble and more upskilling the trouble we've got.
Okay. Have you ever done something like hackathons or something like that? And if yes,
something like what?
Hackathons. Like
we haven't internally. It's something we've talked about, but have not done.
Okay.
Not since I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah, I just one point. I think, a lot of times when you have citizen development, the vision that the citizen has of the whole world is sometimes very small in terms of what they're seeing as their job role. And a lot of times our ideas start with a very small vision, but then expand out. Like, if we're going to digitize this, we got to go back and back and back and cross-functional, and then forward and forward and forward. And they don't see that. And if they built a point solution, it might make their world a little bit easier. But if we have the big picture of a true enterprise workflow that can be digitized, the whole workflow, that is not just their area, we've had a lot of successes doing that. And I think we would have missed it with citizen development, that each one may have gone and done a really cool thing for their little space, but not seen the big picture of how to really get it digital.
Yeah, and that's where we really jump in and try and that's what I was saying. We may not stick with what they built. There's definitely been situations where 4 people are building the same thing, and we take it and go, y'all all are right. That's needs improvement. Let us help you. Or they build something really great, and we can take it farther with a little more support. So at times, Power Platform is a bit of a a wireframing tool or a way to POC something and keeping an eye on what those excited, hungry users are going to do with this toolkit, and then making sure we're keeping our ear to the ground and ready to support or zoom out, to Bob's point, and run with the ideas is a big component of it.
Okay, okay. I have another question, and
Mhm.
the final one is, how do you manage the support for citizen developers during the learning production phase?
When they're in the
I
what phase?
mean, the learning and the production phase. I mean, when they are
Oh, yeah.
learning and interacting like from scratch with the platform, and then when they are developing some solutions or applications.
Yeah, so learning phase, definitely pushing them to the training, checking in, seeing when they have questions, giving them access to known successes. So we'll create copies of well-known applications that are structured and built the way that United builds things. We'll give them a copy of that whole solution for them to play in, that's not hooked up to real data, that they can click around and understand how it fits together, and that can really guide them and help them to get where they need to be on building independently. And then when we're approaching a production scale solution, we're definitely we have standards for Power Platform that the dev team, that Business Solutions holds up, and we're going through all of that and making sure we're meeting it and able to hit the support expectations that we have, because we're not gonna that's the catch with citizen development, right? We're not going to throw something untested, unseen into production and call it an IT solution, and then we all get woken up with tickets from something we've never seen before. So that's definitely a layer of it, is of the governance, is making sure we're not ending up with an ad hoc production solution that is unknown. Definitely building relationships and keeping an eye on who's interested in what.
Yeah, and not only that, part of the organization, just to be clear, Abigail's organization is the dev organization, and the ERP analysts don't report to her. She's a support organization for them. And she, in particular, when we were first rolling this out, we had a dedicated person in Abigail's area. They're not, they can actually be a developer as well, but their focus or responsibility initially was to help transition those ERP analysts into capable, understanding the standards that they had established, the best practices, and how to utilize Abigail's team to do the really heavy lifting of APIs and so forth and so on, and reusable components like we described earlier.
Okay.
Sorry. With 3 minutes left, I want to make sure we do cover Prince's question. If there's anything else, like, feel free to pop it in the chat. Prince, do you want to quickly ask your question?
Thank you so much. Abigail, first of all, this was really amazing to hear your story. It definitely tells us we all are living in the same, going through the same journey. I have a question around what was your environment strategy, especially when you were growing big? What was your decision point that, okay, I need a new environment now? And then what was your strategy around, like, did you have dev, production, and QA environments for one function, or was it like dev and QA in one place, but then for you have separate environment for productions for different functions? So, like, what was your strategy? How were you creating and managing your environments?
We went through several iterations of that early on and struggled a little bit with our environments. Where we've landed now is a dev, a QA, and a production, not separated by area. That doesn't work well with how we operate. So we're locked into dev, QA, and production at this point. And then we don't use the default environment, or, of course, people's little personal Power Platform environments. Try and really keep things locked down to dev, QA, prod.
And citizen developers use same environments as well, or do you have separate
Yeah,
workspace for them?
when we catch them, if we catch them first, we get them in dev.
Okay.
The challenge, of course, is that default environment and Power Platform is out there, right? So if they find Power Platform before they talk to us, they're in there, and so that's sort of the catch-all, and we keep an eye on that as well. But that's almost treated as an additional dev, right? A sandbox. We have, I think, 1 or 2 more environments that are just siloed sandboxes with different config, basically, to try out different things before we push any configuration changes into our mainstream environments, but typically just a 3-environment setup.
Awesome. I was just going to share one experience from our end. Like, we were probably late into the Power Platform journey in our company, and then citizen developers beat to us. So we inherited a number of like 52 environments already up there, and now we have a COE toolkit set up and looking our ways to, okay, how do we clean this up? So we're just going through a bit of journey there. So that's why my question was that.
Yeah, same thing. Early on, it was Wild West. Someone would be like, hey, I built an app and everyone in my department's using it, and it's in like their environment, siloed, and has the same name as 20 other things. And yeah, I mean, it's part of the challenges, and it's give and take, right? We want people that excited. We want people solving problems and seeing the value in this and executing these ideas and innovating. They're saving time and building really great stuff, and the cleanup's just part of it. We build what we can, but I don't have any intention of keeping people from building if they're excited. I want people to stumble on to the Power Platform and build something, and I'll come find you after you do. I'll be your next phone call.
I see. And then you basically, like, whomsoever you find, then you add them to the dev queue and prod environments that you have for them.
Not to prod, and not always
okay,
to
dev.
QA. But
Dev and
yeah,
QA, okay.
we will give maker to dev at the first sign of interest. We will get you in there,
I
let
see.
you start playing with us.
Awesome.
And then if, like I said, if you're trying to get going before we've given you that access, before you've talked to us, we keep an eye out in the default environment as well.
Awesome. This helps a lot. Thank you so much, Abigail, for your discussion on this. I know my answers now.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Abigail. Bob, we really appreciate it. Raina, thanks for bringing them our direction. This has been a great conversation. Clearly, there's a few questions still left in the chat. We'll do our best to try to get some of those addressed as we can. Now that we're at the top of the hour, I want to at least kind of wrap up. We've got another session for the Power Platform Master Series lined up for next month. As we are jumping into the world of AI, one of the recent posts that Satya had mentioned was around kind of optimizing cost for, when we're talking about tokens per watt per hour. So we are going to discuss leveraging the Power Platform, get a little technical, and go into Azure AI Foundry and start optimizing some models that we call on from Copilot Studio. So should be a good technical conversation. Please feel free to register. And again, thanks so much for engaging in a great conversation. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned earlier on, this has been recorded, so I will be putting the recording on the Master Series Hub. Feel free to grab that there. And you guys can review and distribute the recording as you see fit. So thanks again. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.